How are you?
Good. I was thinking of you. I mean, you have a lovely face.
Thank you.
Do we leave you two alone? Sure.
I'm blushing.
We haven't seen each other for a long
I know, an
time.
awful long time. And
Yeah.
the first thing you do, B, is make me blush.
I'm so happy. Chetan, how are you? No response.
Didn't hear you.
Okay, let's get started. So thank you everyone for joining. Chetan here, micebook. Happy 2021. I did make a joke that we could easily have played the May talks from 2020 and it possibly could be the same, but we hope not. We hope we've got some good content again, at least a bit of insight into what's happening into the marketplace for 2021 and what the vision is from the agency leaders. This is being recorded and it will be on our forum, which I'll come on to in a second. So if you could, I love that you've got your cameras on, but if you could go on to mute so that we don't get the background noise apart from the speakers, thank you. Got the chat box for questions. Please do pop things in there and I'll try and get to them as we're going along. And as always, the objective is to share best practice and recover stronger and faster. And we really appreciate the open and honesty given by all the panel members today. micebook messages, we've got the V Awards, which you hopefully know, which is a celebration of all things virtual and hybrid. We've changed the date. So it was in May, it will now be in 2nd of July. That's just so we can have the best chance of having a live event, because that's absolutely what we want to do. So 2nd of July for the V Awards. You can go to micebookvirtualawards.com for more details, see our fabulous panel of judges, and you can register your interest. And you can also, if you haven't done so and you do have virtual offerings, please do register them on micebook.com if you're an agency, if you're a supplier of virtual services in any shape or form. The voice forum that we have on Workplace is closing. It is going to move to a new forum. So I have popped the details right at the top of this thread, of the chat thread, voice.micebook.com, and you can sign up to the new forum and I will send that out. And so that closes on the 1st of Feb. So we're going to migrate over this month. You're the first. Well, we've had a bit of an advisory testing it all. Feedback's been good, but you'll be the first to get registered on it. Also, please do try and put your profile image and your company name. That'll be appreciated. Right, let's get straight to this one. Really delighted to have some shy retiring types of our industry leaders, which many of you will know. So I'm going to get them to introduce themselves. Can you tell us your name, company, and tell us your New Year's resolution? I'm going to come to Richard first.
Me, Chair.
Yes.
Yeah. As you know, well, my name is Richard Murphy. First event. We're based in the north of England in Leeds. We're a mice agency, turnover about 11 million. Got 30, 40 staff working for us. My New Year's resolution, as you know, is a bit of a weird one this year. I'm going to buy some woodland and I'm going to have a bit of a legacy. So that's my New Year's resolution. Get some woodland, duck pond, chill out, relax, and that's my thing I'm going to do this year.
Nice. Rick.
Good afternoon, everyone. Rick Stainton, founder and group exec director at Smyle, and founder of One Industry, One Voice and the We Create Experiences campaign. Smyle's a creative agency that's got a bit of a reputation, I guess, for delivering very creative and innovative experiences across a number of different sectors, IT, telco, media. We do things like the Ryder Cup opening ceremony. We do activations at Mobile World Congress. We do music events for Red Bull. We do big activation product launches for Samsung and Facebook and so on. And yeah, very pleased to be here.
Thanks, Rick. Charlotte?
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Charlotte Gentry from Pure Communications Group. Delighted to be here this afternoon. I am the CEO and founder of Pure. We are a full service agency, have been very embedded in logistics of running events for a number of years. The agency's been going for close to about 18 years now. We made a transition at the back end of 2019 to become more of a communications agency, which has been a really interesting experience for us. And as a result, we've been doing a lot of very varied work over the last 12 months, which has been fantastic and really exciting. Yeah, I'm very happy to be here today and to impart any pearls of wisdom that I might be able to impart to anyone here on this call.
Charlotte, there is high hopes for that, I assure you. Chris, finally.
Yeah, hi, I'm Chris Clarke, owner of Purple Dog Solutions, a bijou agency based in the middle of nowhere in North Bucks. We really focus on doing things slightly different to mainstream in terms of the way we operate. We're a sort of a freelance associate partnership philosophy, which has worked quite well over the years. And of course, in 2020, it meant that we weren't in the situation where we were furloughing lots of people. We just simply and sadly didn't really work with many people in our sort of partnership. But we deliver creative events like everybody else, but at the same time, you know, we're not in the market to try and be the biggest and the most far-reaching. We just want to do great work like we all do. New Year's resolution, kind of don't really have one, except that I've got a new puppy, so another life that I need to keep alive for the whole of this year. That would be a good start.
Brilliant. Thank you everyone for joining. Okay, let's get straight into some of the questions, and as I said, please do pop into chat any questions you may have for the panel. Most of our passions in this group on this call is live. We want to get back to live. Of course, virtual has been brilliant. It's been really innovative, but in terms of live, Chris, I'm going to come straight back to you. What are you seeing in terms of any conversations you have with clients? Is it all postponements? Is it all, I mean, what are they saying? When, where, and when can you start having those conversations again?
So from a personal perspective, our live events have been pretty much like everybody else's.
It's Perrine speaking.
Hi Perrine, it's Nick from Meetings.
Hey Perrine. Like everybody else's, our events have been basically put back. We've had one cancellation, which was ironic. It was the day after we won it. But other than that, they've been put back. We were supposed to have our first live event of 2021, which was a postponement of a live event from 2020. But as that is March, last week they made the decision to put it back till 2022, which is rather lovely. But I would say that most of the events have postponed. What clients are saying to me is quite simply, they don't want to make decisions. You know, they're making the decisions that they need to make, i.e. that they are going to do something. And in the case of the live events that we've got on the books at the moment, they are all postponed, so postponement events, so nothing brand new. On Christmas Eve, we were awarded another event, which then got postponed on the 4th of January. So I don't think we're out of the woods just yet, but one of the things that I did, because we're very, you know, we are quite a small agency, I canvassed a bit of opinion on somebody else or a couple of others. And one of the things that came out of that, and I can't mention the name because they head up a sort of a global representation / PR business, and it wouldn't be great for me to mention them. But one of the things that they said, having canvassed tens of thousands of people over the last 6 months, is that there tends to be, or there seems to be, a tendency to go back to the safe or the perceived safe. rather than necessarily what we would call exciting and emerging destinations. So it's almost like maybe at the end of this, we're going to go back 20 years and your Marbellas and your New Yorks and your LAs will be perhaps a little bit more, the perception is that they will be a safer bet, because some of the commentary that they're getting is that people want to understand the safety element, of course, but is a flag carrier going there, therefore access and getting out again quite quickly if they need to do so. The cleanliness, the managing risk, if you like, you know, those seem to be what a lot of the corporate buyers are thinking about now, rather than necessarily all about innovative, going to new places, doing new things. That seems to be the feedback that we're getting.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if that you know bears out, because there's always one thing, people say one thing, but then sometimes do something completely different. So it'll be interesting to see. Richard, we talked just before we went live about an event that you've got. You've got something still live for May, June. Was that right?
Yeah, we've got quite a few events. So we've got the big event going to Lisbon, private charter, 180 people going there. I spoke to the CEO yesterday. I said, you know, what do you want to do about it? And he said, yeah, we're still going, Richard. Yeah, we're still quite happy with it, which is really interesting dynamic. I mean, in his opinion, that providing it's safe to travel, he still wants to do it. So he wants to leave it as late as possible. It's an internal trip, so he's taking all his employees away for a celebration. And like Chris, it was pushed on from last year to this year. So he doesn't want to do it again, because the whole reason for the trip gets diluted. And we've also got private charter for the Orient Express, middle of June. You know, 180 people going to Venice. So obviously that's a big budget, over £1 million budget event. And again, that's still in there. Spoke to the CEO of that company. Same thing, you know, it's an anniversary they've been doing, and the whole point of doing it is to celebrate that anniversary. It's been pushed back from last year to this year. He doesn't want to push it back again. So he still make a call middle to the end of March. So from our point of view, we've still got clients who are desperate to do these live events, really, which is encouraging. So we've got a bit of both. We've got existing contracts that were pushed from last year to this year. We've got quite a few going to the F1, you know, in Monte Carlo. So we've got clients that want these events to actually go ahead and are not happy to move them at this early stage. So it's quite different to Chris's at the moment. From a fresh inquiries point of view, I mean, everything's coming in now for the back end of this year, you know, to 2022 from a live live perspective. And the only thing that's different for us, we're quite heavily involved in the cryptocurrency market. And so 2 or 3 days ago, we had a brief for a big award ceremony in Dubai coming in for April this year. So it's quite interesting. We're still getting live inquiries. The interesting thing is, will it go ahead or not, I suppose, from our point of view.
Just on the live events you've got, are you able to sort of say what sectors they are? Because I feel like depending on what sector you are, depends on your risk, obviously on your risk appetite. So is that why? Yeah,
it's a really good point. So both the Lisbon and the Orient Express are both from the construction industry. So they're both, even though both businesses are, you know, £300 or £400 million turnover, they're both, you know, very hands-on. The CEO is, and it's more, you know, like all CEOs, they've got big personalities, big egos, and they want this thing to get delivered. And so, so probably more of a personal interest as opposed to, you know, a PLC, something like that.
Yeah, and I guess because the construction industry has been working throughout and on site, so it's a little bit not such a massive step from being working from home, I guess. Charlotte, what are you seeing?
It's a bit of a mixed bag in terms of live. I would say that in terms of the conversations that I'm having now, I'm having some really, really strong ones, and we've obviously really kicked off this year in a very, very strong way with having a lot of people wanting to have a lot of conversations, which is absolutely great. We shifted obviously quite a lot of events into this year. None of them have been postponed again yet. I think our first live event at the moment is meant to be taking place in May. They've not postponed. It's meant to be taking place in Europe. I'm expecting to have more conversations around COVID safe environments and rapid testing and stuff like that to make those types of events plausible, as opposed to further further postponements. And we've also similarly, to Chris, we haven't really had many cancellations. They've all just been postponements. So I really think that the way that the conversations that I'm having now are, I think our clients just irritated. I think a lot of people have had to last year shelved a lot of stuff because obviously the shock had set in of the fact that this was all happening and this was a major global problem. And a lot of companies shelved a lot of their activity because they just thought, you know what, we're just going to write off 2020 and it will be what it will be. And whatever they could turn into virtual and they could do those things virtually, then absolutely great. And obviously there's quite a lot of virtual work out there in the market, which is fantastic. I'm experiencing now that people are thinking, okay, that we simply can't behave in the same way this year. That level of pressing pause on life simply can't happen. And so, and people are now also, quite frankly, beyond irritated with endless, in terms of the corporate, endless delivery of webinar content. I think that they find, online fatigue is definitely set in. We are having endless conversations now about how do we, what does that transmission of content look like? How can it be delivered in a much more dynamic way without it just being, as I put a post up on LinkedIn the other day, a set that looks a bit like the Muppets, where you've got everybody in little boxes. What is the alternative? So I think people are looking for those innovations, especially within the customer experience area. So take aside, the employee motivation is absolutely an enormous problem, because especially now everyone is depressed, irritated, confined, and can't see a light at the end of the tunnel in terms of employee motivation. But people are having to really think about their customer engagement strategy, and that's a lot of the conversations that we're currently having are very much around that.
Right, thanks, Charlotte. Rick, are you seeing the dynamics of a live, anything that's going ahead changing? Is it smaller? Is it more local? Is it hub spoke? Is there any changes in dynamics of the live briefs that you're seeing?
Yeah, thanks, Chetan. We've got some live bookings already coming through for May, June onwards. Obviously with the caveats of sort of stage posts of revising them, just subject to how the pandemic pans out and the vaccinations and so on. So revising from, if it's live, what sort of calendar flag is there in place on the project plan to then look at whether it needs to be transformed into something more hybrid or complete to virtual, and agreeing that in advance with the client to sort of give them more confidence. Obviously, all the live elements are subject to current government guidelines, whether it's the reduced capacity, lateral flow testing, distancing, screens in place for caterers, and non-touch, collateral and registration and so on. There's fragile confidence appearing, but I think there will be more bumps along the way imminently, depending on how the next few weeks pans out with the peak and stuff. It'd be interesting to see the impact on Glastonbury. I think from a wider perspective of confidence in the general UK anyway, consumer confidence, which obviously then bleeds into perhaps corporate confidence in some respects, because it will get a lot of media coverage. I'm not confident that will perhaps go ahead. I think the insurance lobbying probably won't cut through, but that's just my personal opinion. We'll see. However, Mobile World Congress and the Euros are still potentially taking place as planned in June onwards. So, that's good if that stays in place for a lot of key brand experience agencies. There's a heightened level of briefs coming through, certainly from the last quarter of last year, particularly from braver global brands. Interesting to hear from Richard about sort of the construction sector, obviously, have pretty much been open throughout, and obviously the IT, telco, media sector have thrived in this last 6-9 months, and have the confidence perhaps and the money in some respects, but you can't be too generalistic. But the need for in real life experiences and product interaction for them is really prevalent. With One Industry, One Voice, we did some surveys towards the end of last year, and 96% of business leaders say that events, add value to their businesses. 93% said the absence of live events has had a detrimental impact on their staff engagement, to Charlotte's point, and on internal comms. And 3/4 of them said that absence of live events experiences has had a detrimental impact on their marketing. So there's no lack of will and demand out there, and I don't think that's a surprise, hopefully, to anyone. But for me, on the brief side, events now need to be perceived to be more worthwhile. A lot of events historically were booked because they were annual, they were done anyway before, and it just came up in the calendar for the FD or the MD or whatever, and then they just put together the rehashed brief from last time. Obviously, I'm being quite generic there, but in real life, as I said, from the stats quoted, are really important for client engagement, relationship development, staff support, strategy buy-in, networking, motivation, now needed more than ever for obvious reasons of the isolation. But strategically, live events now are part of the wider mix available to clients, as opposed to historically being pretty much the only main ingredient used, and therefore they need to be demonstrably relevant to whatever the client brief is. And I think they have, certainly we're seeing much stronger links to wanting more social, personal, and a responsible delivery of them within the project management makeup, the briefing, the format of delivery. And I think events will become more perceived to be more special occasions. I think the pandemic effectively highlighted their importance, but also highlighted when they were relevant to deploy rather than other forms of content delivery, and when not so. So, I think they'll initially stay local and regional, obviously subject to the international travel appetite, which again is very varied across the world and different sectors and individual brands and their cultures, and what happens with travel corridors. But I think there's a big influence increasingly on cost, time, and sustainability considerations for that big international travel convention or conference or product launch, and that will be quite clearly put through into the briefs over the coming months and long term.
Yeah.
So, sorry, go on, Richard.
On the back of that, Rick, I totally agree. I think one of the concerns for me would be that, historically, if you look at a traditional incentive program where, a sales growth program would come into place with a communications plan that goes along with it, with the actual end trip being a glamorous overseas event. What we're finding, or one of my concerns, is that certain sectors will still have had that growth without the actual incentive plan in place. So from an FD or commercial point of view, they might look back on the balance sheet and say, well, actually, we've saved £1 million here on that marketing activity, but we've still got the sales growth along there. So going forward, that be questioned, is that a valid expense that needs to be put forward, really? So same thing as what Rick was saying, that clients traditionally sometimes have just gone along with things where they've not had the confidence to actually draw a line in the sand and say, actually, is this working or isn't it working? Whereas the whole point of this pandemic has actually made that happen. So from our point of view, lots of our clients have not had that incentive campaign in place, and yet the sales have often increased anyway, which is a concern for us and for our industry, really.
Yeah, interesting. I mean, you mentioned Glastonbury, sorry. And so do you think there's some big events planned in the UK? I think we're doing, is it the G8 or something? And we're also, what's the environmental one in Glasgow as well? Yeah. So those are kind of, they're very much in plan. I know one of the agency leaders on our group is running those, and that he was saying that they're very much still going ahead. So I guess we're looking at these big events to give general market confidence. Is that, would you agree?
Don't understand why that isn't working.
Yeah, 100%. And it's not just about, it's the media coverage that the cancellation of them will get. It's the impact on the supply chain, which we'll get onto, I guess, later on, capacity and resourcing. It's all the brands that are involved. They'll be inspired by them going ahead and seeing them in practice, in real life, how it can be done safely, and that will inspire more confidence. The cancellation of them will sell alert and warning bells that either the individual country or government guidelines have not perceived them to be safe, which is one thing, but the perception may also be that the organisers couldn't demonstrate that it could be safe, which is even more worrying, which is probably not the reality, as we saw from the Southampton Boat Show et al. Public health generally are not in tune with our expertise, and that's a legacy of decades of our industry not really being understood or represented or valued with the global expertise we have. But the perception is everything and the confidence is everything. So, Glastonbury is one element from a consumer media perspective, but the bigger business shows are key because they will give case studies and demonstrations to the decision makers of how viable it is, and that's the fragility that we've currently got at the moment.
If I can just cut in there as well, I would also say that this is going to be one of those, everything gets talked down or talked up. They become self-fulfilled prophecies and so on. And I do think that once there are some events, live events that actually do go out, I think that there will be a cascade effect overall, particularly in the industry, different industry sectors that have shied away from them at the moment. I mean, we've got our first live event is in May, and that has been booked, and that they're absolutely adamant that that's not going to cancel, and that's actually going to get bigger. But I just think that once we get a few of these actually able to happen, and as Rick says, really being able to demonstrate what we all know, which is that we can create COVID safe, probably a lot safer than shopping in Tesco's. I mean, we can do it, and there just needs to be some demonstrations, some examples, some case studies, some positive PR to talk our way back into them.
Charlotte, just
I think that's all true, but I think one fundamental that we are, to be honest, the government have made such a hash of this whole scenario, and I'm not going to bang on about that because it's wildly depressing, but I think the longer that the government keep us locked down, the only and people are, they're saying now that the chances are that we're going to be locked down until the 31st of March. The question is 6 weeks or 8 weeks enough time post a lockdown scenario for that consumer confidence to come back, to actually feel that one can actually deliver an event in May? So there's a big difference, if things get released because they actually hit their target of inoculations in the middle of February, then obviously there's an impact to that, and things become, and we're able to go out a lot more, and there's a level of freedom. There's a huge sense of fear right now in terms of and I don't want to be overly negative. However, there is a flip side to all of this, and I think that at the moment one has got to hope for the best and prepare for the worst, because there is nobody knows, and nobody has a crystal ball what is actually going to happen this year. And this new virulent strain of the virus is frightening a lot of people, and the media coverage isn't helping, because when you're seeing people that are very close to death who are in their 20s, and obviously they're isolating specific cases of this, that is damaging consumer confidence enormously. And I certainly am finding within my personal contact base and environment that they are clamping down quite significantly now on police regulations, and really stopping people doing from steering off doing what they should be doing legally. And I think if they don't hit the target of the amount of inoculations of the elderly by the middle of February, that's going to have a knock-on effect, which will then mean that we won't be able to go out until the end of March, which is what they're stipulating at the moment. And then, that all has a knock-on effect in terms of how close to the wire are people prepared to continue with live events based on what the government is stipulating. And we can only make, our clients and us, we can only advise, and our clients can only make decisions based on actually what we're allowed to do, and also what perception is correct in what is perceptionally appropriate at the moment. I mean, I was just talking today with my senior leadership team about organising our company incentive stroke away trip, in terms of taking everybody, because everybody more than anything wants to see each other, wants to do something, wants to go away, wants to, and the resounding message even I'm getting is, yeah, amazing, but we can't be doing it outside of the current guidelines or environment or whatever. And how much longer will it be until people feel comfortable with doing that?
Yeah. Well, I'm just going to move the conversation slightly on. Let's say there is some confidence comes back, the vaccine rollout goes well. Staying with you, Charlotte, are you already finding, or do you anticipate a massive, so let's say pent-up demand Q3, Q4, but a real struggle to find supply availability? Is there going to be a real mismatch of where we are and how we're actually going to deliver these great events that we're all hoping to get back to very quickly?
I'm not. The answer is yes, I think I mean, having spoken to quite a lot of clients over the last couple of weeks, I definitely think there is the definite will to want to get back to doing live events as and when it's right and appropriate and perceptionally correct in which to do that. I think September is probably a safe environment for people to feel in terms of a timeline. I think, you know, September is kind of where people are heading in terms of their views on that. And we've certainly got events that are currently still in the diary for May and June. So it'll be interesting to see, as the others have said, whether, you know, the likes of MIPIM will move, maybe World Congress, etc. But there's definitely a will, 100% there's a will. I think that, I think in terms of the supply chain, we tend to we tend to be very creative and not go to mainstream suppliers anyhow. So I don't perceive that we're ever going to have a problem with the supply chain. That's my personal view. I don't think we're going to struggle to create the solutions. And obviously we will work around the clock to create those solutions in a time frame that the client requires them. So I'm personally not concerned about the supply chain aspect. And I'm also not concerned about the resourcing aspect either, because I think, you know, we've got an industry now that's flooded with incredible talent. And, you know, I think one's able to pull on such incredible resource as and how one needs it. If you don't have it on your full-time payroll. So I think in terms of venues, I think, you know, the venues that we tend to use at the moment, we're in regular contact with a lot of very unique bespoke types of solutions. And in terms of, you know, production suppliers, and, you know, where I don't perceive the supply chain to be an issue.
Richard, what about you? Do you see both into, I mean, I know the agencies here represented today, I know they're all busy delivering virtual and hybrid solutions to your clients. There's going to become a point where the live briefs come back and your teams are going to have to jump back into live, or you're going to have to recruit if you've changed this kind of makeup of your teams. How do you see that internally and back, you know, just staying with the resource question, or that favorite magician or whatever it was, you know, or so a lot of this supply would have had a massively terrible time over the last year and a half. How do you see it?
Yeah, I think I probably disagree slightly with Charlotte. We've got different client base, but I see the supply chain on two sides of it. From a supplier point of view, we do a lot with the ACC. I have quite a few exhibitions over there. I know for the back end of this year, you're struggling to get a date for the ACC, for example. The pent-up demand's huge, and for the first quarter of 2022, same thing. We're really struggling to get dates in there already. Airline perspective, you know, the actual capacity of airline seats is going to be reduced, and I think that will have an impact. So we might have a demand from a client's perspective, but to be able to deliver that from a logistical point of view, I think there will be a problem from that side of things. I think the other concern for us, I know there's a few DMCs on here, you know, as a business, we are concerned about DMC's financial security as well. Like everybody else, you know, it's been a tough time for the whole of Europe. So from an agency's perspective, you know, that they are concerns going forward as well about the financial security of DMCs. Do you commit financially now, which has an impact on the whole industry, really, you know, keeping that supply chain going. From a resource point of view, yeah, you're totally correct. You know, I know we spoke about this last week, but the people that we employed, you know, 18 months ago, were all joined my company to deliver fantastic events globally around the world and deliver live events. And obviously those people with those talents are now being asked to deliver virtual events. So I'm getting quite a lot of pushback from staff saying that, you know, like we said, they're not engaged and not enjoying the job. It's not the job they signed up for. So that is something that's ongoing. We're reskilling them, we're training them, but we're training them a job they didn't actually apply for, if that makes sense. So from a recruitment point of view, you know, we've taken on four new members in the past 4 weeks. 3 of those were tech roles. So it is a real dilemma where we are at the minute, and you are correct that there will be a crossover where we're going to have the team delivering virtual events, but at the same time those inquiries and those briefs coming in for live events to deliver, and it'd be that really strange time where you're trying to, from a resource planning point of view, it'd be really, really tricky, really.
Yeah. Chris, I'm going to come to you. how tired are you? And what I mean by that is, like, I think last year, okay, it all happened. It was all new. There was almost this like sense of, right, it's all new. We need to solve the current situations. We need to postpone events. We need to maybe deliver some virtual solutions, but we're sort of still going to be in this journey for quite a while. Are you just bloody tired and just like, how are you going to find the energy to get to the other side? I mean, that's a personal question, I know, but what do you think? And maybe speak for yourself, but also just like the industry, we're going to go on this journey for a lot longer.
I mean, tired is, I'm probably like most people, a little bit pissed off, frankly. I mean, you know, a lot of what we are unable to do, it's all out of our control. What we feel we can do and should be able to do, and even if we have a client base that wants to do, we can't. So I think there's what I think is positive, and I've taken positive out of this, is that going back to your previous question really about the supply network, if you like, I think that there's been some really, really positive, grown up, very pragmatic decisions made in this industry across the world in terms of hoteliers, contracting, in terms of DMCs and so on and so forth. You know, I think everybody, well, from my experience, everybody's played ball, which has made that's made it easier, and we're all in the same boat. As going forward, Purple Dog Solutions is very much a live events agency, very, very much so. And we deliver, contrary to maybe perception, we deliver far fewer incentives than we do conferences, press launches, things like that, but we do them. And it's been a struggle for me personally to get my head around the live event stuff, because we don't have the infrastructure. We don't have the infrastructure owned, operated by us, so we have to partner. And that's fine, and we've done it well and successfully. Personally, it bores me, frankly, it bores me. And so I haven't gone out to market to say, oh, we are now this sort of almost rebranded, et cetera, agency that is focusing very much on virtual. What I have said is that we've added skill base in the term by people and partners. We've added skill base. We're still a live event, but we've added the skill bases that we need in order to deliver the virtual or the hybrids. And I'm quite happy to go forward that way, because there will come a time, I'm forever confident about this, there will come a time when the live events, for those of us that actually are in live events primarily, they will come back, they will be different. I still maintain that they will probably be in slightly less avant-garde destinations and places around the world, because I think that there needs to be, you know, going back to the supplier question, you know, airlines, I agree with Richard, airlines is going to be the big one for us. Airlift in and out of places is going to be huge. And I don't believe the low-cost carriers are going to instill the confidence out there. So I think live events will come back. Am I bored of the virtual? Not yes and no, but no, because we haven't been inundated. We've done 3 in Q3 and Q4 of last year. We were supposed to be delivering one on the 25th, but that's been canned because the client has basically said we don't even want to gather to do you know, the actual presentations, and they don't want to do it from, you know, their back rooms and so on and so forth. So that's not happened. So bored, yes, bored, pissed off more than bored, because we've got very little control over our own destiny, and in events we're all control freaks. And that's the thing for me. I would say going forward, it's, you know, I'm living for the day when we do open up again, and we have clients that are really confident to do it, but they're not confident to make the decisions right now. And I do believe we're going to go back to a time when we've all got 2-3 months lead in time for a big majority of what we're doing.
Okay, thanks, Chris. Moving on again very quickly, conscious of time. Charlotte, the virtual world, let's just touch on virtual for a little bit. We've had this discussion where a lot of the audiences are now possibly going into their second, maybe even third large virtual event, not just a webinar, but an actual virtual engagement piece, a whole day conference or so on. So things have evolved massively over the last 12 months. The audiences are getting more sophisticated, and budgets are hopefully or potentially increasing because they know the value of content. What are you seeing in terms of key trends in virtual, almost like 2.0, because we're going into the second year?
Is that to me?
Yeah, Charlotte, yeah.
Oh, sorry, apologies. I think that also a lot of our clients have been, they've invested in their own platforms. So it's been very much really around the content curation, as opposed to they're doing a lot of the delivery themselves, and a lot of it has been webinar based, if I'm honest. The uptake for big augmented reality and kind of and 3D and 4D experiences has not been huge in the environment that we sit in. We've done a lot of external client webinar stuff. We've done where we've made it more engaging by using, they still want to use the back end as a Zoom or a Teams scenario, but we've been asked to bring in a lot of engaging experiences. We've been asked to reformat a lot of stuff, looking at how doing analytics around, how do you keep people's attention spans for periods of time, formatting what those conferences look like. And actually, to my complete horror, I had a girlfriend of mine who works for a massive software business call me the other day, and she's been told she's got to do her kickoff conference for 6 days this week, 6 hours a day. And I mean, I was listening to this thinking, what lunatic has put that together? I mean, I could not get my head around it. I was like, they're a global, enormous software business. And I was like, somebody in marketing has decided that they sent them some, as a sort of a gift box option, a plastic flag, a piece of paper on mindfulness, and I don't know, a couple of other really crummy pieces of kit. And she called me up in absolute disgust, going, I'm meant to be motivated as a senior commercial salesperson for this software brand, and this is what happens. So it's interesting to see that even these massive businesses that should have be able to throw big money at internal marketing teams, they still haven't got a clue. And they're not talking to their brand at all. They're just thinking, okay, we've got to do something here, and it's for 5,000 people. What are we going to do? And we need to make sure these boxes are only going to cost, I don't know, 10 quid or something. Let's just fire something out.
So it hasn't evolved for some brands.
For some brands, I think people are still slightly caught like rabbits in the headlights and thinking, and I think there's a real perception. This is what I'm experiencing now this year, thinking, oh God, really, we're still stuck here. This is like how can we be now almost in a worse situation than we were in March, April of last year when it first happened in terms of the messaging that's coming out of the television. So what does that actually mean? And I can't sit here and just put stuff on, we can't just carry on doing, talking about diversity webinars or whatever, because we've done that to death last year. So how does that evolve? And so we're now coming up with, we are coming up now with hybrid solutions. We are coming up with more engaging live virtual solutions, if that makes sense, in which to deliver those.
Yeah, I'm going to say we found that the big fundamental difference with those is that our clients are second time round they're better educated, so they've got greater expectations about what to get. We've had clients come to us and said, can we have what they had on was it Saturday Night Takeaway with Ant and Dec? We want, first time around, no one even knew what that was available. Whereas the second time around, people are saying, I've seen this website, I've attended this webinar, I'd like this, I'd like that. So we found that the audience is far more sophisticated coming back around the second time, which is great because they actually know what they want, as opposed to the first time around, it was a case of, Jesus Christ, we have to get this message across. How can you help us do it? So we're finding that clients are far more demanding now. We do a lot of, I know Dan's on here from XM, but he'll I'm sure agree with me that exhibitions are a big thing. Where at the beginning it was quite a two-dimensional experience, whereas now there's everything going on there. From we've had clients do live meditation sessions. We've had nightclubs, we've had live bars, we've had avatars coming and meeting people on the screen, and it's quite a different experience about what people are getting now compared to the first time around is the way we're experiencing it, really. Just while we're on chat, there's a couple of guys on there asked about Budapest and South Africa on those questions on there. Dora, hello, I can't see you on there, but you talked about doing a workshop at the back end of May or something at Budapest, and would have been appetite for it. So definitely, from our point of view, from an agency side, we're more than happy doing that. We had, as you know, I was in Dubai a couple of weeks ago. So where, as an agency, we still travel on where business allows us. So I still think there'd be an appetite for that. And Richard, you're talking about the British Lions. So the same thing. I think there's an appetite for it. I think we've got lots of clients saying, when can we actually get confirmation of it? The only thing they need is, and I think Rick mentioned this, but flexibility on contracts with suppliers is a major thing that people, and I think it's Chris talks about it as well. What's come out of this, I've loved the fact the industry's pulled together so that it's not been a supplier, whether it's a DMC or a hotel, saying, well, screw you, the contract says it's a non-refundable deposit, so we're going to keep it. What's come out of this is that we have all worked together to say, well, actually, we understand where we are. We all need this client to keep with us, so let's be flexible about it. So in answer to your question, Richard, I think, there is a demand for the Lions tour. We're getting that anyway, but clients would only sign up to something if there's complete flexibility about, COVID contracts and all that type of thing, if that answers your question.
Chet, can I come back on the supply thing? Because I think I'm afraid I sort of disagree with Charlotte, respectfully, Charlotte. The essence of the pandemic has created a fundamental market shift. And I think you've got to be pretty naive not to see that. There will be less destinations open in the medium term, at least. There'll be lower venue capacities, which will limit the opportunity for certain venues to even deliver events above a certain capacity, and therefore the higher end ones with a capacity of 10,000 will only be able to do 2,000 to 5,000, and it cascades down, limiting capacity. All the trends we're seeing at One Industry, One Voice is there's a huge amount of skill set draining out of the industry, either through not be able to fund themselves and having to look for alternative work and reskill and retrain. Freelancers particularly have been hit and don't see a short or medium term opportunity to get back to work in the next 3 to 6 months from their original skill set, and they're going to different industries. I won't name any names, but there is a very clear amount of production, AV, technical and other agency suppliers that have gone, and 2 significant ones I heard about just this week that are very well-known international names from a technical production delivery. Quite shocking, actually, at pulling out of at least the UK. So if there is this heightened momentum into Q3 and Q4, there will 100%, especially when you're going to have the likes of COP26 and so on taking up a massive event. This is the biggest international event for a number of years the UK has hosted. There'll be a huge drain on freelancers, logistics, security, infrastructure of staging, lighting, because there is going to be heightened demand and there's going to be restricted supply, both from an equipment infrastructure perspective as well as from a sort of a freelance and so on perspective. And they won't wait until September and can't wait a lot of the time for briefs to come through and deposits to come through. So I think you have to sort of, if you're not already running a business or you're not engaging with a client, recognizing these fundamental market shifts, then you need to. New habits have been formed, social well-being, traveling, restricting that, better family time is what we've all become used to with working from home. There are obvious downsides, but businesses will look at staff engagement and productivity, and the sustainability element is a huge boost now to the habits being formed, because you'll have less travel, you'll have less stress on the commutes, and I think going out for live events will be more of a luxury stroke, more of a privilege rather than a mandatory position to be in, because it plays to both the commercial side of a client making that decision, as well as productivity and time money linked to the alternatives, which I said before, there are more alternatives in the mix. From a trend perspective, studio-based hybrid events are already happening. A bit of reticence with the recent lockdown to presenters not wanting to go into the studio, but going back to virtual, but that'll change. So 100% hybrid orientated models are here for the long term. Clients trust the technology now. The industry's developed better solutions. They're less risky, less new and gimmicky, and clients and the industry better understand the tech. The likes of Pathable or Bizabo or ON24 Hopin are off-the-shelf, readily available platforms. They're formulaic. They do what they say on the tin. You know, it's the Word document through to the Keynote document. They're not particularly customizable. And more agencies are combining their broadcast and their technical ability with their content and strategy ability to deliver multimedia content, incorporating live content, gaming, AR, workshops, polling, hackathons, all onto one customized format, which creates a lot more of an important balance between that content, broadcast, and live and experience. So, you know, their ability, obviously, for audiences to become customizing their own experience by exploring digital spaces, navigating spaces, choosing how and who they engage with, and taking control even over their own hybrid and online experience. So I think, you know, it's critical for sort of clients and agencies to advise on that, even through to in events entertainment, you know, right, you know, like the Fortnite gaming and the gaming industry is massively capitalized on having entertainment embedded within other sort of performances and content. So, you know, Travis Scott shows on Fortnite, 30 odd million views, and created a huge amount of press and income. And Dua Lipa's a bit of a one-off, but Dua Lipa's and someone else, can't remember, online sort of shows garnered a huge amount of commercial success. Now, that's not necessarily going to be the mandatory approach, but people are understanding and developing better ways of communicating more of a hybrid element. So I do feel that, you know, that is going to be here to stay, and the consideration of that will be a lot more prevalent in clients' view, because habits, as I say, have been formed. People want more time with their family. Staying at home at least 1 or 2 days a week will be more appealing, and we're better equipped now in some areas of the industry to adapt to that. And I think that events will be very much more deemed to be a special occasion, something that isn't just the go-to, but almost just stress tested a little bit more versus other opportunities. So that's just my view on those 2 points.
Can I just cut in here as well? I agree with you, Rick, on pretty much all of that. I would also say that the government, the Exchequer, has a say in some of this, because let's talk about incentives. There haven't been any incentives for a year plus, or almost a year, from anywhere really. I mean, Middle East has done some and a few other places, but talking from the UK and most of Europe, there's been a few, but hardly any. I just wonder as well, when incentives come back and they are the icing on the cake, they are special again. I go back to that point of almost being in the past, bringing the past back again, when it was something special rather than just we do it every year. I just wonder whether or not people being used to not travel, will they want to travel a lot more with their families after this, as opposed to with work colleagues, even if they are as couples? What about benefit in kind tax? What about all of those things? Government's not really extended much of a helping hand to our industry, as we all know. I just wonder going forward whether, you know, people are getting used to not doing stuff. I think there's going to be corporates a lot more understanding about individuals' reticence to travel after this. So again, I go back to that. I think that the sort of safe destinations perception, I mean, what is that? But you know what I mean. There's so much to it in a shift of habits, and a shift of habits to habits that we haven't even experienced as yet, because we're not open for business as such. I think it's up in the air. It's very up in the air.
Well, Chris, I just come back on that. I can tell you now, I love my family so much, but I'd love to go and travel. I've been with them for 18.
That's also fair. That's also fair.
I think there are a lot of people who are desperate to get out. I mean, and go do something different. And I think that as we've all had to adapt in one way or another, you know, nothing is ever, if you can't move and you can't be dynamic and you can't be agile, you can't progress in many ways as well. I mean, that's my personal view. And unfortunately, we've all had to be agile in the industry, and there's been, you know, it's been a torrid time for many. But I think agility is the key, and having to think outside the box is going to become more and more important.
Thanks. So I'm just going to wrap up in a second, because we've only got a few minutes left. I know, Charlotte, you've got to go, so I'm going to say my thanks to you for joining today and your honesty. Thanks for joining, Charlotte.
Thank you very much, Chet.
Rick, I'm going to just come to you. Just can you, for many people who I'm sure almost everyone on this will know about One Industry, One Voice, give us a quick sentence on the mandate of what it is, and then can you just tell us what happened? Give us a wrap up of what happened pre-Christmas, because I know there was the campaign started, and given everything that's just happened now, what is the kind of plan for the rollout for getting the confidence back for consumers?
Thanks, Chetan. Well, very briefly, I think as most industry leaders on this call have recognised, we've suffered as an industry for the last couple of decades of a lack of understanding, both from government, the general public and media, of what we're about, our global expertise, how we cover all different regions, how we cover so many different disciplines, how we covered so many different elements from youth employment to senior positions, our contribution to the economy, our expertise in sustainability and health and safety and logistics, married with our innovation and our creativity, probably most highlighted by the 2012 opening ceremony as an example that people would recognise, or Glastonbury in another ilk. But effectively, that issue married with the fact that my sector, which everyone's involved in pretty much on this call, is one of 7 events industry sectors. There's the wedding sector, there's the outdoor event sector, there's the music sector, there's the exhibition sector, there's the experiential sector, there's the sports and mass participation sector. They are very intricately linked with our sector. And I think there's a huge amount of misunderstanding, or perhaps not enough education on how interlinked we actually are. The vast majority of our sectors share the vast majority of production companies, venues, hotels, freight transport, caterers, freelancers, technical production. I could go on. And they can all do one project in a month across all those 7 sectors, and we don't recognise that. And I think thirdly as well, the pandemic encouraged, apart from the profile and the contribution, and of course the cross-sector experience and integration that we should recognise and work closer together to support, it therefore meant that One Industry, One Voice has a mandate. When we reached out to so many people of what do you want us to do, the 3 key messages was explain to everyone just in clarity what we do, the scope of what we do, the power of events for us to influence and inspire society and the audiences, help them celebrate, support society across responsible charity events, mass participation events. And then obviously the pandemic more recently has created an opportunity for us to demonstrate our safety and health and safety and logistical expertise. So with that all in mind, we've got a cross-sector group of people from all those different aforementioned sectors, including this one, working together to support all the different campaigns, whether it's Project Recovery, nightlife, music. What about weddings? We create experiences and we make events, obviously a slightly more hour orientation. We did a B2B campaign before Christmas with a huge amount of high profile celebrities, videos, as well as some key messaging in a main video, which I think was viewed over 250,000 times now in just the last 3 or 4 weeks, which was great. We had coverage across national TV, print media, and a lot of social media engagement through the industry and externally, which was great. And now we're building on that mandate, unique mandate for the first time, to go into a B2C campaign in the coming months for the more music, weddings, live outdoor, sport, mass participation and charity stuff, which are more consumer focused. So that's effectively the mandate that we've been given. We're now part of the APPG that's just been set up with the government. I'm attending that on Monday with Simon Hughes to get more representation. Several people have asked, are we going to get a Minister of Events? That will be nice. That will get us a little bit more of an input on that. But effectively, more people need to know what we do, how we're integrated with society, how we're integrated with lots of different sectors, how we benefit the economy. The power of events drives growth in business, benefits society, mental and health well-being is very, very clear with regard to sharing experiences. We've got a professor from the University of Sussex, a specialist on that, advising us on that as well. So it's bigger, better clarity of data and messaging from an industry that's properly represented with a clarity of message and voice coming through from one organisation. And if you would like to support it, please go to oneindustry1voice.co.uk. Website is actually supported by Chetan and micebook. Happy always to mention his support. And the specific campaign is wecreateexperiences.co.uk. It influences and benefits everyone to support us. So thank you for that platform, Chetan.
Thank you, Rick. And so thank you everyone for listening. I really appreciate, thanks to the panel for their honesty and insight today. New Voice Forum, please do sign up, voice.micebook.com. And the 27th of Jan, which will be our next talk, will be micebook talks to corporates to get their insights and outlook for 2021. Thank you all for listening. Have a great week, month. We'll speak to you soon. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you,
Jeff.
bye.
Thanks, mate.